I worked for other people, and I thought, God, I definitely want my own company. I think initially it was not my frustration in Hollywood, but I hated working for other people. I did not like it at all. It just it did not work for me. I wanted to do things my way. I didn't want to do things the way someone else wanted me to do them. And that's what gave me the drive to start my own company. It was me in my apartment. That was my own company. It was me in my apartment with a telephone and an assistant who would come, he'd come over to that apartment from 9 to 5 or whatever. And the two of us just sat there and, tried to sell movie scripts, and we sold them. When we started the company, there were a lot of super talented people who were not working, and that's no longer the case. It's that there's so much work now in TV and streaming and movies. There's just so much work now that it's you can't replicate what we used to do. There really isn't that the idea of like Moneyball for movies. It's not really, you can't really do it anymore because everyone's working so much. But definitely the first 5, 6, 7 years of the company, that's what I used to always say to people. And it's funny to hear you say that because no one knew what the hell I was talking about when I said that, but that's exactly what we did. We looked instead. Hollywood looks at your last movie. They don't look at your body of work, which is insane.
It's insanity.
But we always looked at the body of work. Like, the guy that did Saw, he did 2 movies that didn't work after that, but he wrote and directed one of the most successful horror franchises ever of all time. I bet that guy if he gets this a horror movie, I bet it'll be good. That was James Wan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Now, this is one question I've always wanted to ask you. What makes a good horror movie?
A good horror movie should survive if you take out the scares and just watch it with no scares. It should be a great drama. So a good horror movie has a great story and great acting. If you have a great story and great acting, the scares will work. If you have not a good story and not a good acting, you could have the greatest scares in the world in your movie and they won't be scary. You got to get the audience riveted with what's going on plot-wise and story-wise. And in order to do that, you have to have a good story and you have to have great actors. They have to believe what they're seeing. So when you surprise them with a scare, they're so entrenched in the story that they're not ready for it. And then it's scary. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be scared.
The Purge probably is the best example of, or one of my favorite examples of kind of touches all the aspects of what I feel like we do best. Really all takes place in a house, but it's about this huge idea. What if crime is legal for 12 hours a year, every year? What would happen? There's one location. There are 6 speaking parts, maybe 7. And it's what I always say to our staff to keep your eyes out for, which is low budget, high concept, scripts.
Do you remember where it came from? The
security camera?
Yeah, that look?
It came from the first Paranormal Activity. He fixed the camera in the bedroom, and so at night you saw that frame.
It's scary.
It's scary, and it's very cheap. You stick your camera up there, you let it roll, you could go forever, and it's very inexpensive too. So it checks 2 boxes.
Now, do you think that The Purge is almost like the perfect embodiment of the Blumhouse model as far as the rules are concerned of what the low budget pillars of?
Yeah, there are 2 movies that are really they're more than 2, but like The Purge is perfect, high concept, low budget. I think Get Out is pretty near perfect,
right?
Kind of high concept, low budget. Sinister and Insidious also really are where they really embody what a Blumhouse original is. They check all the boxes, that it's this super gripping, wide release, wide appeal movie made for very little money. And the acting is great, the story is great, the characters are great, and as a result, the movies are scary.
Yeah, so the formula in broad strokes is we only make low budget movies. We get paid nothing. The directors get paid as little as we're allowed, which is scale. The actors get paid as little as they're allowed, which is scale. And the pitch to the filmmaker coming in, my greatest successes, or our greatest successes, have been with filmmakers who've kind of had a hit and then kind of gone off a little bit. So James Wan did Saw, and he did 2 movies for Universal you've never heard of, and he came into my office and he is pissed.
They're in movie jail.
They're in movie jail. They're pissed at the system. And one of the biggest reasons we get mad at the system is we go to work for a studio. The studio tells us what to do. The movie bombs, we get blamed. So we, being the filmmakers, get blamed. So that is a very powerful tool that our company uses. And we say to James, or whoever it may be, can't promise you a hit, but I'm going to give you final cut, and I promise the movie will be your own. So you're going to live or die on your own work. And I kind of make a joke, although it's not really a joke, that it's auteur filmmaking. It's the kind of French style of filmmaking, but it's for commercial movies. And that's a very powerful message to a man, or hopefully woman, who has kind of been burned a little bit by the system.
So it's not first-time filmmakers necessarily.
We don't. The big difference between us and Roger Corman, we're compared a lot to Roger Corman, who I love and is terrific, but totally different system. Roger Corman was first time, do everything as cheaply
If you're
as
not an old person, Roger Corman was 60s, 70s exploitation.
famous,
Famously gave everyone their start.
Famously gave Jack Nicholson and so a gazillion people their start. But his whole thing was super, super cheap from beginning to end. Mine, I don't want a first-time filmmaker. I want a filmmaker who's kind of been through the system and has something to prove. Scott Derrickson did Exorcism Emily Rose, which was a kind of a big hit, and then he did this movie, this Keanu Reeves movie for Fox, which didn't work at all, and he was in my office and ready to make Sinister. And we've done it time and time again, and it's a very effective tool. And when the director doesn't make money, unless the movie makes money, guess what? More often than not, when it's a choice about what's going to make the movie more commercial, the argument is a lot smaller because our interests are aligned with the director, as opposed to paying him a big fee up front, when then he just wants good reviews because he's been paid already. So the studio hasn't.
So the economics of it are you've got some actual sort of, it's a formula, right? Like up to $5 million for the first movie?
Yeah, well, the reason that we get to our number is actually it's totally reverse engineered. So the number used to be 3 million, 4 million, now it's 5 million, and besides inflation, which obviously isn't that big a percentage that I just mentioned, we get to the number by worst case scenario, where are we gonna lose? And it's studios do low, mid, high ranging cases, but the movie can come in below their low case, like it often does. We can't get worse than our low case. So in a worst case scenario, the movie's upside down and backwards, I can get $2 million out of the United States and $2 million out of
No one
international.
comes to see this movie.
Oh, it's not in theaters.
Right, so you've got a version of this,
No
but you don't
theaters.
even put it out.
It's not a version, it's a pillar
Right.
to our strategy, which is I say to the directors, no distribution, guaranteed.
You look at it.
We don't decide.
You test it?
We test it 1,000,000 times, and we don't decide how the movie's going to be distributed until it is finished. And I say to the directors, I guarantee your movie will be seen, but I'm not guaranteeing how it will be seen. So it might just be seen on iTunes, or it might be in 3,000 theaters, and we make that decision after the fact.
If we were doing that right now, and we were looking at the budget sheet, where would we start to cut?
There's a triangle like this. There's the number of speaking parts in the movie, so the number of characters, the number of locations, and the number of stunts and special effects. What I always say to our directors is, you get to pick one. You can have a lot of speaking parts, but then not too many locations, no stunts, no special effects. Or whatever one of those three things they can have a little bit of. That's what we'd be talking about. I'd be telling you, that guy, does that waiter really need to ask them what they want to eat? Can he just come up to the table?
So that happens.
If the waiter says, do you want to hear the specials today? That actor's $550. If the waiter just comes up to the table and you cut away, that actor's $75. Yes, so it really happens.
Does your model work best in horror, best in sci-fi? Does it work in comedy?
Our model for sure works best in scary movies. I think when people pay $10 or $8 or $12 to go see a comedy, they want someone real. They want Adam Sandler or whoever it is. They want someone they know really well, who's really funny, and they want to spend an hour and a half with that person or 2 hours. Scary movies are actually hurt by having movie stars in them. When you have a huge star in a scary movie, it actually makes the movie less scary because the people are watching this movie star and you're jumped out of the movie all the time. It's much scarier for someone who's a great actor, whose shoes you can put yourself into. Yeah, sure. I think that people who don't understand horror or don't particularly like horror you know, a lot of studio executives fall into this category because horror can be commercial. So studio executives, give me the scary movie. You know, what are your horror pictures? You know, and you can tell when someone doesn't really understand horror when they focus on like, what are the scares? Like we need to, you know, we need more scares. We need more scares. And scares, if you know and love and are a fan of horror, a filmmaker in the horror business, you understand that the scares are not, you know, this is going to sound weird, but people aren't scared of the scares unless what comes before the scares is riveting. So you have to have great drama, and you have to have, you have to get someone to forget they're watching a movie. And if you forgot you're watching a movie, you could have kind of silly scares that are very scary. So the example you're talking about Get Out, in the beginning of the movie, when the deer hits the car, there have been 500 movies where people are driving along and something hits the car. You know, it's not, Jordan's not brilliant because he thought of a deer hitting a car. Jordan's brilliant because he puts this couple, a black man and a white woman, they're going out, they're talking about race, they're going to visit her white family. She's saying like a little tiny things that are like not right, and it's just tense. You're tense. If you're black or you're white, all audience watching that is like, what is going on in this car? You forget you're watching a movie. The deer hits the car, you jump like crazy, and that, it's really not appreciating the genius of Jordan Peele or Lee Wanell or James Wan or Scott Derrickson or so many of these filmmakers who they're not good at doing scares. They're good at doing drama. And that's why the scares are so scary. And that's why I also always say, you know, when we're doing a movie, I'd rather work, I prefer to work with a director who does great drama than like a typical, you know, they've done 10 horror movies director.